My name is PHONIQUE and I'm 44 years old. That means I'm in the business for a long time. I'm a DJ, I'm a producer. I'm producing under the name PHONIQUE and DJing under PHONIQUE. But I also have a label called Ladies and Gentlemen, and this label belongs to a company of labels. There's a big label behind it. It's called Superstition Entertainment Network, and they are responsible for labels like my label, Ladies and Gentlemen, but also labels like Dessous, where I released my previous albums on, and labels like Poker Flat, and they're working with Trent Müller and people like that. Well, I'm coming from Berlin, and Berlin is the capital city of Germany, and it's kind of I would say, the capital city of electronic underground music in Europe, or maybe in the whole world. We have many clubs. I don't know, it's endless, like 30, 40, 50 clubs and places where people go out and listen to electronic underground music, like in other cities where you have like commercial music and this music. We have like a lot of clubs just for underground and electronic music. So yeah, that's the main thing about Berlin. It's a city which is packed of people who move to Berlin, artist people, because Berlin is very vivid, it's very alive, and it's kind of cheap to live there. So we have a big art scene and music scene. For me, the house music, like the relation to house music started somehow when I would say about 16 years old, and I heard for the first time tracks like Inner City Big Fun and D-Mob, we call it acid, like very early house tracks, acid tracks, which were just coming over from Chicago and from, I would say, from Manchester, from the UK to Germany, and you could hear some of those tracks actually in the German charts, because as a kid, back in the days we didn't have internet, and we couldn't research and stuff, so we had to go to a party, we listened to some music, we had to go and ask the DJ what is that music, so they wrote it down for you. So that was my first contact, and I'm from a small city. I'm not from Berlin. I moved to Berlin in '95, but when I first listened to house music, that was like 1988, so that's a very long time ago, and that was in a small city called Mörs, and the guy who was DJing, I'm still in contact with, he kind of inspired me. His name is Andreas Schneider, nobody knows him, but he had like many projects, he was producing, he still is running a venue in Germany, doing concerts and stuff, so he stayed in this business. But it's funny to see how this, like, some person inspires you in a way, and after, I don't know, 25 years, I'm still in contact with this guy, and if he's coming to Berlin, we meet up for a drink and stuff. Underground music for me, and not just personally for me, but also I guess for Berlin, for the people of Berlin, is music you don't hear in the charts, music you don't hear in the radio, and it's not very easy to decide what exactly is underground. And that's why it's very different for people in different countries. In some countries they have like extremely commercial music on the radio, on the TV, and they are somehow on a different level of commercial than we are in Berlin. For me, commercial is already what I'm listening to in the radio, and that can be what I'm listening to in the radio in Berlin can be underground in Russia, for example, because they never hear this kind of music there on their radio stations. So I would say, but the thing in Berlin is like it gets very tricky. So people who are real, like they start to say we are real underground, or the true underground, because maybe house music, you have a nice vocal in it, and then all of a sudden it's not underground anymore because it's not raw and it's too much melody inside. So even in Berlin, there are different levels of underground, and if you go to clubs like Berghain, for example, or like let's say I'm playing at Berghain, like Berghain has this big techno floor and the panorama bar floor. Everybody also knows the panorama bar. I was playing at panorama bar many times, and for example, at panorama bar I would never ever play a Solomon track, because that's for me is not underground, and I can't play it at a place like this. Although this guy has, I don't know, 500,000 followers or something. But that's, for example, how strict the differences in Berlin are. Like, you couldn't play like a track from Solomon at Panorama Bar without having a bad feeling for it. House music is originally coming from Chicago. Was kind of electronic music which somehow developed out of people trying to make kind of disco music, but with the modern technology of 1986 or something. So they got their drum machines, and they have their 303 where they can program bass lines and stuff. And all of a sudden it became like an own kind of music genre, and the music which was more coming from the disco with melodies and vocals was called house music, and the more darker style, which was also influenced by German Kraftwerk and stuff like this, with like more like experimental and faster electronic music, was more in Detroit, and it was called techno back then. But somehow always there was a connection, of course. And this kind of music came over to Europe, and quickly there was a big scene in the UK as well, the Manchester house scene, and very soon, of course, DJs were like catching up with the style, and they found it interesting. Like this guy in my hometown who was like, he had a record shop, like back in the days. Nowadays you go to the iTunes store and buy your music. Back in the days you went to the record shop and buy the stuff you want to listen to at home, because that's the only way you could listen to it, or on the radio, but then you have to be very lucky to find your song. So that was a usual business. Like back then you went to the record shop, paid like round about €5 for a 12-inch with your favorite track and 2 other versions or something, and then listen to the record the whole day. So this guy was working at the record shop, and he got some of those records. So he was like thinking, okay, when I'm DJing, I'm trying to play more of this stuff. And that was all over the world. People, there were DJs like in Paris, there was Laurent Garnier and those early house DJs. And the music just developed because the technology was more affordable to many people, so many more people could produce their own music. And of course, if you, after the time, there are much more styles developing, and some people coming from the hip-hop, they had some ideas, and so it got into that direction. And then people are more from the jazz side, so there were all those different genres of house music all of a sudden, from jazz house, like progressive house, which was more like tribal, faster, and electro house, tech house. Now we have deep house. Back in the days, deep house, I was a big fan of deep house. Like there were artists like François Kevorkian or Charles Webster. They were like, for me, the true deep house artists, and they were. It was even sometimes like it was so repetitive, like it was loops, and it was almost kind of boring. But if you know the music for a long time, it's like getting you into a trance, like a meditation. You listen to the same loop again and again, and the DJ made like slow mixes, and it slowly developed. Nowadays you have like heavy bass lines, you have a screaming vocal, you have like a lot of snare drums to make it like super exciting for the one moment. And they call it deep house nowadays, but back in the days, deep house was like a completely different genre. And I was nominated for the Deep House DJ Award 2008 when they first had this category for the Ibiza DJ Awards and for the Beatport DJ Awards, and I was nominated alongside François Kevorkian and Charles Webster, Jimster, Milton Jackson, like people like this, like all like really great deep house artists. And I was always, I felt a bit not fitting into that because my music was a little bit more pop already, because too much was happening. I had vocals, but and I was luckily I was winning both awards back in the days in 2008, and I feel a little bit responsible for the downfall of deep house, because after that deep house got more extreme. I'm not saying that I'm not doing this kind of music, but like what they call deep house nowadays is completely different, and I saw it happening in 2008 when I was winning those awards. Like the genre changed a little bit, not for the good. So now people have to look out for different. Maybe they have to invent a new genre, like the true deep house or something. I don't know, to get back to find this old school deep house. When I'm producing music, I usually hear something in the radio or at a club. I hear a completely different track, and I hear some sounds, some little melodies, and those little melodies inspire me. I hear them like they are in the background. Other people probably don't even hear those ideas I get, and then I try to keep this idea. Sometimes I'm singing it to my phone just to remember the melody I have in my head, and then I go to the studio and start to work on this idea. Like usually, I'm producing with a partner who's like running the studio, knowing all the equipment, because I personally found out one time when I started to produce, it takes so much time to do everything, and my first track I did by myself took me 2 weeks. The same track, if I would have done it with my partner in the studio, it would have taken me 4 hours. So I thought like it's a waste of time for me to do this stuff. So I'm going with the idea to the studio, tell my studio partner, hey, let's do something like this. Then he's usually coming up with some beat ideas, and we are working on those, and then it's mostly the time for either starting with some melody chords, something like that, like finding a synth sound to create this idea I have in my mind, or it's a bass line. That's basically the first options after having like a kind of a beat in the background. Creative process then is like it's just happening. You feel it, you search for some instruments, you hear a nice sound, and then you get some more ideas how to do it, and the next point is like doing some arrangement and then getting some new ideas about that. And if you think the track is good for a vocalist, then you send it over to a vocalist of your choice, waiting for the result, and then doing this. And the creative process behind DJing is I just buy whatever I listen to and I like I'm searching on Beatport. I think it's very important for a DJ to go out to listen to what other DJs are playing, because you get a different view on the topic. You see, you experience yourself what is working for yourself as a guest, and you're with the other guests and you have the same feeling. And I think it's very important, and many super professional DJs, old DJs, are not doing this anymore. They're just going to their gigs and then they finish playing, they're going home or going to the hotel or whatever. And I think it's important, and it really inspires me a lot. I've found a lot of good DJs that way, and get inspired. And I start like for example, I went to a party in the morning in Berlin, and this music was just incredible. I was like, who is this DJ? And it turned out it's a guy called Chris Schwarzwälder. He's producing on this on one of the labels I'm also released on, called Kater Mucke. Like there was a club called Bar 25 in Berlin, and then now it's called Kater Blau. And this guy is like playing for them a lot. So I'm checking his SoundCloud mixes, of course, doing some research, and figuring out, wow, these tracks are super nice and would fit into my set. So of course I buy all those tracks, and not just this one guy. Like, I do it with a lot of music, because somehow if you go just to Beatport and try to find music, it's very difficult, because there are, like, I don't know how many, let's say there are 10,000 new tracks every week, and it's impossible to listen to all those tracks. So you can either go to the charts and check the charts, but then you're playing the stuff everybody's playing. So I rather do a mixture of everything, like because the other DJs are already doing like a pre-selection for me in a way. I see, oh, that worked for me when I was there at the party, so why not play it myself? So that's how I think it's a good idea. Saves time, and yeah, and of course I also get promo mails. Like, I get like 100 new tracks every day by mail, like, because labels want other DJs to play their music. But that's also a tough thing to do, like listening to all those tracks. I decided to pick the name PHONIQUE because I was doing a lot of research, and I have to say it again, back in the days when I picked my name, there was no Google available. You couldn't just like easily type in and check it out, so it was a little bit more of an effort. I was like going through a lot of records, writing down all the names I liked, and then trying to make combinations, variations of the names, and then I was looking up the meaning of the names I found, and I came up with PHONIQUE because it's a French word, and I was personally very inspired by French artists, especially like Laurent Garnier and DJ Deep, because I came from the western part of Germany, and when I was growing up and started to get into house music, when I was 18, I was driving a lot to Paris, which was just like a 4.5 hours ride by car, just to go out there. During, well, like, that was when I still was going to school, like on the school holidays. I was going there with a friend just to party. So I felt like it's good to have this memory, my roots somehow shown in the name. So I thought a French name is nice, and the meaning of PHONIQUE is actually it's a word which is not really used in French as a single word, but the meaning would be something like it's something you can listen to, it's audible, you can hear it, but they usually also only use it for the term isolation phonique, which means like sound isolation. So I thought, wow, that's a name which probably, if you look for it, you won't find other results. Nowadays, I would say, if you Google it, you don't find anything different than just me or isolation phonique. So I thought that's a good name. The only problem with the name was, of course, it sounds very feminine, like Monique. But I thought, I don't care. People will find out. Since I am a father, I would say my musical life didn't really change too much. Of course, you have responsibilities and stuff, so I can't do stuff like other people doing sometimes. Like DJ T told me that he's going on a tour in North and South America for 3 months. I can't do that, so I can just travel a maximum of, like, I would say 2.5 weeks, because I need to be there for my son and I want to be with my son, of course. But other than that, it's like more you have to organize your life much better. And I usually have my son staying with me from Monday to Thursdays, which means I have to be 100% there for that. And I can't go out on Sundays and party like crazy at Panorama Bar or something, because I need to be fully sober and fit for my son to spend quality time with him. That's the only thing that changed. Other than that, I still do the music I'm doing. I love to do. I go to the studio, but and it needs to be managed a little bit better than before. First time I came to Brazil was I think something like 2006 maybe 2000. I think 2006. I was invited by a promoter who was doing a night at the Edge Club. And I met Renato Ratier, the very famous guy here in Brazil, who had a club in Campo Grande as well. At that time it was already closed, but he booked me for his birthday party there, so we went there together. So just on my first visit I already got in contact with one of the most important guys in the electronic music scene here. And then I came back to play some very, very special events like House Ship, where it was a boat cruise for 4 days and nobody could leave, so they had to listen to my music on the night where I was playing. And it was a big success. It was absolutely fantastic. There were a lot of promoters and important people, so they got me back to Brazil more times. And then at one point I met, I think on my third or fourth trip to Brazil, I met Diogo Ascioli, who is nowadays my best friend here, my booker, my tour manager, and my warm-up DJ or my back-to-back DJ. We are very much alike. He's a little bit more techno, but we are thinking alike and everything. So it's since I'm working with them, my profile built up a lot, but that also had to do with some tracks, of course, I produced. Like I had Feel What You Want out on my last album, which became very, very popular here in Brazil. So that was 2010. So since 2010, I would say I'm playing in Brazil almost 6 times a year, or let's say 5 times, 6 times. Always coming for New Year's Eve and making probably four tours a year, where I'm going to different cities, from Sao Paulo to Rio, Curitiba, Floripa, and other cities, Maringá, Porto Alegre. And sometimes I just come for 1 weekend to play like 1 or 2 exclusive gigs and then flying back. And I'm really happy here, I have to say, because I mean, Brazil, of course, everybody knows it's a great country. The weather, except for today, is very great. You have great food. The people are very into music, very excited about music, and they can party, and that's what a DJ needs. And my music fits very well to the Brazilian people, because I have this wide range of music I like myself. So I go from disco, deep house to techno, tech house in a way, and I love to play everything. Not every track of this genre, but in every genre there's some music I really like, and I think the way I can present it to the people, so if there are people who are more into tech house and I play some more deep house stuff, they still like it because it has this certain groove I'm representing. And the other way around, if I play something which is more hard and more techy, even people who are more into vocalish melody sounds understand this music, because I make it happen in a smart mix, I think, which combines everything in a way. So that's, I think, the reason why I'm playing here so often. And I play like events from sometimes a very posh place with a table service to underground clubs or some places like the Edge, and that's that's very good for me. I really like it, and that's why I feel very in love with Brazil, and that's definitely my #1 country where I'm traveling to.